Hello boys and girls, welcome to Black Rook Hold. This is a dungeon in Season 3 Mythic Plus of Dragonflight, and we'll be going through the main boss and trash mechanics that you need to know once this is live on the servers. The trash before the first boss includes some ghostly constellars which cast Shadow Blast, you just need to interrupt that, and ghostly retainers which leave a long dot on somebody, but it is magic so you can simply dispel that. However, be careful because if you pull way too many of those, you get way too many dots and you will not be able to dispel everything. The packs also feature ghostly protectors which at low health will cast Sacrifice Soul. This reduces the damage that the mob around them take but increases hugely the damage that they take, so at this point you can just focus them down or stun them to interrupt it. At the end of the corridor there's a mini boss that's going to cast Strike Down. This is actually a frontal that hits pretty hard, so make sure you're not in front of the boss, and then spread out because he's also going to cast Glavy Throw, which does damage to the initial target but then bounces to initial targets and does even more. Also note that we went right here at the start. You can go left, there's a different mini boss there which actually casts one of the boss abilities that you're going to see just in a second, so nothing interesting on that side. The first boss is Amalgam of Souls, and he's going to throw a skite at somebody. Be on your toes and be ready to move because it starts spinning in place, and if you stay inside you'll die pretty quickly. You will know that you're targeted by the blue arrow on top of your head. A player will also get targeted by Soul Echoes, which starts dropping bombs at place which explode in a short time. You can stagger them in place and stutter step to the side until the ability is over, and of course make sure you're not inside of the detonations and be aware that mechanics can overlap. Reap Soul is a short cast that cuts the room in half. Be prepared for it and make sure you're not standing on the blue side of the room. If you get hit, it's bad. Not only you take damage, but you'll also be taking increased 100% damage for the next 30 seconds. And at 50% the boss goes into the middle of the room and calls souls. There's 7 banshees that start crawling inside towards the middle. You can stun, slow them, etc. and you want to kill them in the next 30 seconds because if they hit the boss, they increase the damage that he's going to deal with his next ability. The next ability is called Soul Burst and it does AoE damage to everybody in your party, so be prepared to use defensive for that, especially if you let some souls hit the boss. Rinse and repeat and on to the next RP. To the next trash. You're going to run up the spiral stairs and there's going to be small spiderlings hitting your tank and inflicting a debuff that stacks on him. Make sure to dispel it as often as possible because it stacks pretty quickly, especially when you have more of the small spiders. And the goal here is to run up the stairs and kill the big spider, which also has a stacking debuff for your tank. On top of the stairs, you're going to find several different mobs. The Risen Arcanist is going to cast Arcane Blitz that you need to interrupt, and his small mob is going to put badges on the ground that you need to stay away from. The archers will randomly shoot at people, then jump to the side and cast Arrow Barrage, which is basically a frontal cone that you need to move away from very quickly, unless you want to die. The Soul Thorn champions are going to cast a frontal that does a ton of damage and stuns, so move away from that as well. And there's also the scouts that will just knife dance, which is spinning around in place and damaging everybody in the vicinity. Plenty of mechanics to be aware of as you're pulling all of these mobs at the same time, plenty to dodge and plenty of stuff that will just hit you and kill you at place. Once you clear the room, a mini boss jumps down and it only has a frontal that you need to dodge, but you're fighting him with 2 archers and 2 scouts, so that's actually quite a challenging pack to pull off. To make it easier, you can use the pillars in the room to actually line of sight the archers and make them run to you so you can cleave them down with the rest of the melee. The second boss, Elisana Ravencrest, is going to cast a brutal glaive. You want to spread out at this point and make sure that only one person gets hit instead of bouncing it to everybody in your party. And she also has a Vengeful Shear, which is a tank buster that you need to heal through. The boss is also occasionally going to mark 2 people with Dark Rush, red arrows above your head. Make sure you stay close to the boss and possibly stack on top of each other because she's going to jump to everybody with the red arrows and leave green puddles on the ground, which then you have to dodge throughout the fight. At full energy, she jumps into the air and summons 2 adds, an Arcanist that you need to interrupt, and the champions which have the frontal, so interrupt the Arcanist, bring it on top of the melee, and don't get hit by the frontal. At the same time, she targets players with her Eye Beam, a green beam that you have to dodge, possibly kited on top of the green puddles that are there already. Kill the ads, get the boss down, rinse and repeat, move on. In the next part you fight some scavengers which try to drink some potions. If they succeed and you don't stun them, they get empowered by different ways. Frontals increase damage, local AoE, etc. so try to CC them as much as you can. You also fight big Felwar Blade Guards, which smack your tank pretty hardly and they enrage when they're low health, so be prepared for some extra healing when they're about to die. After that you have to run up the stairs, but there's stones falling down, and right now on the PTR, if you get hit, you die. So be very careful and keep in mind that only one person needs to make it to the top and then the stones stop falling. Up top you find yourself in a gauntlet with small bats that will just keep coming and big Felguard dominators. Make sure to interrupt their Fel Frenzy, which will boost the damage that the bats do around them, and be alert because they'll make the bats fixate somebody, so that will be a good point to CC and stun them. The goal here is again to keep running up the stairs where you encounter a few more Felguard dominators, and the bats will just keep spawning until you reach the top and the room for the third boss. Smashspite is going to cast Earth-Shaking Stomp, which basically does AoE damage and knocks everybody back. You also have bats shooting poop from the sky to the ground, leaving green puddles on the ground, stay away from those. And then he's also going to fixate somebody with Hateful Gaze. Once that expires, he charges toward that direction and hits the first person with Hateful Charge, which not only does damage but also leaves a debuff on that person, which increases the damage taken from subsequent Hateful Charges. So the TLDR here is, if you get gazed and you don't have the debuff, that's fine, but if you have the debuff, somebody without the debuff or the tank needs to soak the charge so you don't get one-shotted. Keep dodging the poop and shortly you'll be on your way to the last boss. Before the boss you have to pull a few packs with Lancers, which will just dive into a location on the map with brown swirly on the ground. Just don't stay in that because it does damage and it stuns, and watch your tank as the swordsmen have a tank buster that hits pretty hard. In phase 1 of the last boss, dodge the big purple lines on the ground during phase 1, and dodge a yellow glavy that the boss trolls and he travels between him and the edge of the room. At 20% the boss transforms and phase 2 starts. He will occasionally cast Shadow Bolt Volley. Be prepared to heal through it because it leaves a dot as well as the initial damage, and the first one hits specifically more than the rest, because shortly after he transforms you actually get a buff, but you don't have that for the initial cast, so be prepared to use defensives at that point. He will also place green circles on the ground. If you go in there, you fall asleep until you take damage or the healer dispels you. And after the boss casts Dark Guile, beams start shooting from the side, so you have to dodge them, run counterclockwise, still dodge the green circles on the ground, and keep going until this phase is over. He also has one more mechanic called Stinging Swarm. He's going to target a player and make it attackable. You have to basically kill that HP bar as quickly as possible because while that is active, the player is taking damage and can be stunned. I also didn't mention that in phase 1 he has a tank buster, which leaves a stacking bleed on the tank throughout the fight, so the slower you are in phase 1, the more damage you have to deal with during the later phase. However, after a few iterations, you should have absolutely no problem killing this boss and completing the Black Rook Hold dungeon. More guides like this one are available on my YouTube channel. Let me know in the comments below what do you think about them. And of course, if you have any suggestions, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, good luck and take care.